Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Lots of topics this week on Donnybrook. Thanks for joining us. Let's introduce the panelists and get rocking and rolling. Starting with Wendy Wiese from the Big 550 KTRS. Sarah Fenske, executive editor of Euclid Media. Ray Hartmann, founder of the Riverfront Times and now a columnist at Substack. Alvin Reid joining us from the St. Louis American. Alvin, there was shocking news today, at least unexpected news, that Tim Lohmar, the prosecuting attorney for St. Charles County, resigned abruptly. And the announcement wasn't made by the prosecuting attorney himself or his office, but the county government. A little strange, don't you think?
Well, yes. And then he, said he wanted to, didn't have the time or the energy to put forth to the job, but you did in November when you got reelected. You had time and energy to campaign. He's had some, I don't want to call them missteps in his background. Well, I think you could. He was charged with a DWI that I guess has not been adjudicated yet. There was an incident with a former girlfriend, and it just leads itself to make you think that, well, what's kind of really going on? Because he, like I said, he didn't announce it, the county did. And then also you have a prosecutor in St. Charles who is willingly leaving his job with a little bit of, circumstance in the background. Then you have one in St. Louis who's fighting to keep her job and, just is not going to leave under any circumstance. It's just very interesting. In politics in St. Louis, it's just interesting.
Well, and the fact that St. Charles County said that we will not be commenting further, that tells you how quickly they're trying to move ahead and move on. So that's,
you think they'll hire
unusual.
Kim Gardner?
I don't think so. I don't think so. That would be a real shock.
I know a lot of people hoping that, the precedent set by Lohmar might be something that other prosecutors give serious thought to. I don't know.
I will say, take a look at the number of prosecutions he filed in 2021. It's about 1,000 more than Kim Gardner.
Yeah, I don't think
So he was tired? I mean, you're buying into the, I'm just exhausted.
What I'm saying is there's, statistically more crime in the city than there is in St. Charles County, but
he was still
his office was churning out more prosecutions.
There's no question, but it's when people, it's the comparison that immediately jumps to a lot of people's mind. You could also, and then of course it'll be considered whataboutism, but had Kim Gardner been charged with a DWI, or had Kim Gardner been accused of stalking someone, we'd have an entirely different, I would say, reaction to it. So, as I say, Alvin's point is well taken. And in fairness to Tim Lohmar, it's certainly not alone. He's not alone. But these people always seem to, you always want to ask that question. It's like, were you aware you had a family?
Well, but don't forget, Ray, Kim Gardner was charged with prosecutorial abuses, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, but it was also, it was covered with great indignation. My point is, in this case, there is no question there's a different standard.
One other thing real quick. Tim Lohmar was also one of the prosecuting attorneys that said she should not be removed from office by the state under any
interesting.
And he's
but
not,
he also said
all right, let's move on.
Remember, he also said that he offered to help and she turned him down.
Let's see if we get more information in the weeks to come. Meanwhile, Sarah, Metrolink got $7.4 million federal dollars. So people from Maine to Malibu are paying for this study that'll determine maybe the best route if Metrolink expands north and south, maybe from downtown to the NGA site up to North County, and perhaps south to South County. What do you think?
Well, I think until we get our bus service fixed and until we get enough resources to get people able to get from point A to point B, it seems crazy to me that we're talking about spending what could be as much as like $100 million a mile in order to put a track into the ground. This is not something that can fluidly shift when the population does. This is something, again, that there's a certain class of people who really like because they like taking it to things like Busch Stadium, but it's not necessarily something that gets people to their jobs. And our low-income St. Louisans are right now being failed by our bus system.
Well, and when you look at the fact that 500, according to a story in the Business Journal in January, they were using data from the USPS that 500 businesses have left this downtown St. Louis area in the last 3 years. that makes this money even more ridiculous. I mean, when you talk about that kind of cost outlay.
Yeah, to have this fixed track when increasingly there are just offices people are going to all around the metro area. It's not like everybody goes into downtown. I can count on one hand the friends that are doing that versus people who are officing in the county, officing on the Hill.
At home.
Yeah, at home even more so. It just doesn't make sense to put this fixed track in the ground when the cost is what it is, when we don't have functional bus service.
I think having a light rail system is an important part. Mass transportation is an important part of a metropolitan region. I don't think we should be giving up on ourselves as a metropolitan region, and I don't think it's classist. I think people of all walks of life and economic strata write Metrolink. And I also don't think that, I'll admit, I'm a fan, I've said it before, of Talby Roach at Bi-State, but they've gotten lots of recognition over the years. I don't know if you have some data to disprove it, that they run a good bus service. I mean, there's...
But they've cut the bus.
Cut it like crazy.
I'm not arguing. But that's also the market. The Caller Rides are a problem. I get that.
Not only did he cut Caller Ride, which are the poorest of the poor among us, so that was just recently, but the very popular Redbird Express, which took all those fans from Illinois to downtown St. Louis for the Cardinal games, it was jammed. Meanwhile, Bi-State is funding the Loop Trolley, which has no ridership whatsoever.
Okay, but now these are federal dollars once again. And
that's our dollars.
No, they're federal dollars.
We are federal dollars.
You say
we are federal dollars.
Let me stop you on that.
That's a good point.
No,
That's
it
a
isn't
good point.
Yes, it is.
It is not a good point.
But
go
I
ahead,
think,
Al.
look, I do believe that the good people of Bangor, if I could go there and ask them, all 128,000 of them, however many live there, would say that, well, if you were actually going to do this light rail, once again, I understand you're trying to get people from north, south, but you're saying like the buses do that or whatever. Do you want people to ride the train or not? Run the train east-west, and people will ride the train, then that will lead to more light rail, which will lead to more success and more buses. We quit funding things that you don't know people will on. Fund something that you know people will be on.
But if I think we continue to get back into this cycle of cart before horse. If 500 businesses left my city, I want to address the reasons why those businesses left the city before I start laying.
But it probably has nothing to do with the bus.
Well, of course it doesn't have anything to do with transportation.
If Al's Shoeshine leaves and it's Al, okay, and I leave, that I count as a business.
It's crime, Alvin.
No, I'm not.
That's all.
Charlie, it's so easy.
A quick fact for you, and that is, St. Charles doesn't have Metrolink. It's the only county that's growing. The numbers came out yesterday. Since Metrolink has been in the city, the population has declined. Same true for both counties in Illinois. It's not an economic development engine.
It's bad. First of all, it's very bad for the region that the folks in St. Charles County, narrowly, by the way, turned out they twice rejected by very narrow margins Metrolink, and we would be a lot better off. Our airport would be a lot better off if we had Metrolink run to the airport to St. Charles. But you got it. You can't. It's so easy
Charlie,
to sit here and say
St. Charles,
it's so.
It would be jam packed.
Yeah,
this argument you make is the same.
Silly.
This argument has been made.
It was 50-50
in Virginia, in suburban Philadelphia.
It's crowded there.
There's no.
Those are population centers.
Also, now Tammy Duckworth wants it to go to Mid-America. You want it to go to Mid-America, where they have 12 flights a week?
No, I wanted to
Hey
go
Charlie,
from
you want to
St.
talk
Charles
about
the airport.
you want to talk about bad planning? You okay with the spent $1 billion with a B on that Page Avenue extension that is almost never crowded because it wasn't needed? Well, it's the point is this: nobody minded the cost of that. The point about Alvin made, whether you think it's when you say, well, it's our money too. That the federal dollars for light rail, if we say no to them, if we say no to the trolley dollars, we say no to all those, they're just going to another community. No, it's not good.
Wendy, that was your argument for Loop Trolley. How'd that work out, Ray?
You know what?
Wendy's coming back April 27th.
It is. All right, let me go to Wendy on another transportation issue, and that's Kia, which is being sued now by both the city of St. Louis and its attorneys, Dowd Bennett.
Right.
And I guess the idea is that 4,000 cars, actually Kia cars, I believe, have been stolen in the city since May. Good lawsuit, Wendy?
I just long for the old days when the cycle, the cycle of responsibility was hold the perpetrator responsible, not not the manufacturer of whatever the perpetrator's desire is. I think that's why we have a crisis. And I almost died, with all due respect, when Mayor Jones said the citizens of St. Louis should not have to deal with this kind of negligence. It's okay if we're dealing with negligence in other sectors of the city, but not cars. Let's just hold the cars responsible. There's this go along with it. Everybody else is filing lawsuits against Kia, and I get that. But let's really hold the perpetrators responsible. But they wouldn't be charged by Kim Gardner anyway.
Well, but here's the thing. These are kids that are doing this. These are like 14, 15-year-olds. And so this actually doesn't have to do with Kim Gardner. What this has to do with is they have made these way too easy to steal. They're not seeing this giant spike in auto theft with other brands.
Wendy, the two are not mutually exclusive. You can be for prosecuting people, and obviously in the juvenile system it's difficult. But the point is, this has nothing to do with whether you want to prosecute or hold responsible the perpetrators.
They're not all 14 and 15.
Exactly.
A lot of them
well, here's no. I'm arguing that
how
you
would we know how old they are?
Yeah, exactly.
You can believe two things at once. You could believe, on one hand, that people should be prosecuted for the crimes they commit, regardless of their age, and two, that in fact, car makers who have been irresponsible and negligent in creating a situation around the country, I think you can do both.
Right. When said individuals steal these cars, and they're easy to steal, it's online, everybody acknowledges that this is not a good thing, okay? 14, 15 years old, whatever, or you're crazed, or you're whatever. When you're in this car, you are now a hazard to the people of St. Louis and wherever this car goes. If a car had a tendency to catch fire while it was sitting on a public street, you would demand action by the manufacturer. Because why? Because it's dangerous. So if your car is easily stolen by people who put other people in danger, then I think you've got a right to say, like, this is
the only reason it's in danger is someone decides to
because
steal
somebody steals it.
You know, in Boston, actually, car thefts are down, and the #1 car stolen there is Honda. Do they have Kias? Yes, but people aren't stealing them. In fact, in all New England states except Connecticut, car thefts are down. Same is true in Phoenix. So it's not a Kia problem. It's a kid or a thief problem.
I get the fact that 22 states and so many other municipalities are filing lawsuits. It's just the optics.
They have accomplished one thing. They found the first lawsuit that Andrew Bailey and the Republicans aren't interested in jumping. That's all they do is amicus briefs, and for some reason they're taking a pass on this.
Alvin, I want to ask you about, I know that you are the proud owner of Reuben, one of our favorite cats on 9 PBS. When we were Zooming from home during the pandemic.
A couple of guest appearances.
Right. Our viewers got to know Reuben. Well, now the state, in its wisdom, has told cities and towns that they cannot, like St. Louis City and St. Louis County, pass laws that prohibit the declawing of felines. Should St. Louis City or St. Louis County be able to make up its own ordinance banning the declawing of cats?
Okay, well, I will tell you that Shelby, Tasha, Greasespot, Reuben, 3 of those we don't have anymore. We still have Reuben.
They've gone to kitty heaven.
They've never been, they had never been declawed. But I don't think that a state should be able to say, like, you can't tell a municipality what to do. And I'll jump ahead a little bit because I do believe that a municipality should be able to say that, look, we're just not having pit bulls here, okay? Just like they should be able to say, like, you all cannot have
exotic
lions,
boa constrictors.
We're not having that. I think a municipality has a right to do that. So would the state now basically be saying that you don't have a right to do that? If I want to have a mountain lion, I can have a pet mountain lion, on Kings Highway.
Right. All these double negatives are kind of confusing, aren't they? It's like the ban to not, the ban to do. I feel, I can't believe I'm admitting this on television, but the cats that we had, the last cat that we had was with us for 16 years. He was a very, very happy cat, but up until Jack, and including Jack, the veterinarians actually encouraged declawing because we didn't know then what we know now. But I detected nor ever heard from our kitty who was jumping and prancing and, you know, doing all the things that kitties do, that he was psychologically scarred by it. I understand. No, he didn't tell me that, but he was a really happy cat and he loved us.
But now you would not declaw this cat, because now there are things that we know.
That we know.
And I think the city and the county, you know, they came in with some good research, and I feel like sometimes our state government is just Googling, like, what have they done in St. Louis? Because we have to figure out a way to preempt it.
Let's put our foot down.
Yeah, they've even written this bill so it's like, oh, you know, they can still ban animal abuse. Well, the people who wrote this bill would tell you this is animal abuse.
Exactly, and wake me up when they actually are concerned about preempting the judgments of small towns all over the state. When there's something that's going on in those towns where the state's going to say to Cape Girardeau or to Moberly or to some small rural town, it's always about the party that used to be about government closest to home is always doing the same thing. And I'm very much like the rest of you. I'm mixed. I'm a cat and dog lover and have both in our family. And I'm with you. I was told, we were advised to do it at one point, and now I have our most recent cat has her claws, and you know, so I think it's right for the local ordinance, for the local governments to make their own calls.
Well, no one took the claws off of you as you started your new column on Substack this week, Ray.
Thank you.
You wrote about Greater St. Louis Inc., which is the big umbrella organization encompassing a lot of individuals and corporations, and it's giving money to Michael Browning, who's challenging Tina Peel for her seat, newly formed seat under the new construction of the aldermanic wards in the city of St. Louis. Tina Peel has been on record as being against subsidies for certain businesses, including Cortex, and you say that's why Greater St. Louis Inc. is supporting her opponent, Michael Browning.
Is a political hit job on her. First of all, Tina Peel is not anti-development. She studied development at MIT. She had a long career in Denver, where she was involved in the Stapleton Airport, a lot of things. She's not a knee-jerk anti-development person. The political sin that she committed, being a bit naive, I think, is that she expected Cortex to play by the same rules as everybody else. Cortex decided, they had TIFs, 10, 12, 22 years, whatever they were. They expired. And Cortex, because they're WashU, decided that these rules don't apply to them. They should just, and they were in fact given renewal of those TIFs without even specifying what they're going to be used for. Now, here's the problem. I forget the name of the PAC. I just wrote it. But I didn't realize, I don't think most people did, that Greater St. Louis has a political PAC. What's the bigger story here to me, I think, is just how outrageous it is that the group that proclaims itself as the unified voice, their word, not mine, unified voice of St. Louis, what's it picking candidates for in local races? Are they going to do it in, you know, they represent the whole region. They're going to do it in St. Charles. They're going to do it everywhere. My point is, they have no business doing this.
Ray, I did think this was a really good column. I would say to people, this is worth paying for Substack for. Ray is in fine form. I do have to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think Tina Peel's sin was that she opposed this particular subsidy for Cortex. I think what I hear from everybody in the business and development community is that it's very hard to get things moving with her desk. People feel, and I don't know that this is true, but the perception is that she is very disorganized and it's hard to get a yes or no, and it has slowed down a ton of projects. Michael Browning, who's run against her, is actually to the left of her, I think, in many ways. And they're throwing their weight behind him because they're saying, okay, this is at least somebody who will give us these approvals we need in this Byzantine system, or he'll reject it in this Byzantine system. Everything waits for the older person to act. So I think your column was great. I think it's a bit of an oversimplification of what got their go.
But what about Greater St. Louis? What about their support of a candidate? Does that bother you? Because that bothers me.
Well, I think they're being honest about it, and we'll see. And my guess is in 2 years when Tashara Jones runs again, they're probably going to support her. And
they gave her max contribution.
You know, and I want to hear that I got a real problem with this, okay? I think they're, in a lot of ways, they're on a lot of the same pages. I think the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, while they aren't out to get the alderwoman there, I think that if she were to lose and Michael Browning were to win, then that would assist them in what their plans are for trying to develop the city as well.
I think they feel like they can't get done the agenda they need to get done without getting some changes in St. Louis city government. I think that's probably a realistic assessment for their agenda, whether or not you agree with their agenda.
Cortex absolutely, positively got treated specially, like no other developer gets treated. It's a wonderful asset. Nobody's questioning that.
You know, it's interesting.
But it's not, that's the problem.
Rex Singfield is one of the many funders of Greater St. Louis, Inc., and he's against those incentives. And another point of fact, Michael Browning was the aldermanic candidate who suggested that police officers responding to traffic violations not be armed. So it's interesting that the business community would be supporting him.
He was also supposed to finish a distant third.
Yeah,
that's They aren't just supporting him, they're maxing him out with
$2,600.
Well, but I mean, twice. And I mean, they're all behind him and some other folks.
Let's continue our discussion in Missouri, the state capital. They want to ban texting while driving. At least that's one of the proposals. Sarah, are you for it or against it?
So I'm kind of a chronic texter while driving. We need this law. The roads are so dangerous out there. Statistically, Missouri is number 4 in deaths per capita across the U.S. on the roadways. And if you look at across the U.S., when deaths began to spike, it's when we all had these little fascinating computers in our pocket that we can look at when we should be looking at the road.
Well, and I've never understood this. Yeah, you can't text and drive unless you're over 21. I'm just as dead or injured if a 57-year-old hits me as I am if a 21-year-old is distracted and hits me, right?
Right.
No, I think police officers, like I've said before in other programs, whether it comes to zooming while driving or a pet on your lap, they have bigger fish to fry.
Right, but see, they can fry the fish. They can still fry the fish, and then if they catch a texter or somebody who's putting on makeup or zooming or with their kitty cat or their pet in their lap, then we got to start somewhere.
It's
Charlie.
difficult to spot, difficult to enforce, difficult to then prove in court.
But it's a start.
But why don't we start with the guy going 95 miles an hour driving in and out?
I agree. They're not mutually exclusive.
It's just the same thing. Everything's always one or the other, and distracted driving is not okay. And I say that.
Let me tell you,
police. As Sarah was saying, I'm a hypocrite. I have been trained. No, and I have been trained by my 17-year-old daughter, who is a model driver, and I stopped doing it because of her, because she got in my face all the time. And the fact is, and to your point, it doesn't matter how old you are. If I'm doing it, if a kid's, it doesn't matter. It's not driving while distracted is not okay. And to have the officers have a tool to prosecute that is fine.
You're on your phone all the time talking, right?
Yeah, but I'm not. You will not see me on a phone, or it's all hands-free, and I will not be looking at my phone anymore. And
But
can't
your
say
mind
I
is
never did.
elsewhere. You're not paying attention to the road.
I tell you, I got cited for this when I lived in Los Angeles, and I was scared straight for 3 years. I moved to Missouri and went right back to my bad habits.
Wow.
Yeah, I need to be stopped. Somebody stop me.
I allowed it a long time ago, and I don't think they have a problem enforcing, because I don't know that people, don't do it. But like I said, last week, you shouldn't have a St. Bernard in your lap while you're driving.
Exactly.
You shouldn't be texting.
Exactly.
Alvin Reid. Caleb Love is one of the great basketball players in the NCAA. He went to CBC. Now he's at North Carolina, but he announced he's going through the transfer portal, I guess. He's going to find another university. You have written about that in this week's St. Louis American. Could he possibly go to Mizzou? But I remember Mike Love of the Beach Boys used to sing, "Be true to your school." What happened to that?
Them days is gone.
Yeah, image and likeness.
He actually, Missouri, Kansas, Arizona were amongst his final 4 schools, and he chose North Carolina. And so thus, with Dennis Gates getting Missouri back together again, I think there's a possibility. I'm sure they've reached out to him. So it could happen. And KU, lost the 5 kids going elsewhere. 5 more will come in, everybody will be fine. So I don't think it's that big a problem.
He has no right to go to KU. I don't know if he's thinking, no, he's ours. The guy's a great player. And to talk about, be true to your school is about as outdated as your wall phone, which you would have been on during the time that song was written. I mean, it's like you worry about skipping over the chord. I mean, it's like, of course, the transfer portal has been a great thing for college basketball and competitiveness, it's freedom for these college students. Let me say this: where's the loyalty from athletic departments and boosters and coaches, the coaches that are getting these millions of dollars, get a kid to uproot their life and go to a certain school, and then they get more money and they go somewhere else.
Or they get injured.
How do you root for such mercenaries?
Well, the point is the whole
the world.
system's
It's
about
the
money.
world
I mean,
we live in.
you think it's about student
It's
athletes?
easier with college than it is technically with the pros, because in college you root for your school. You really are rooting for your school.
Exactly.
You love the guys and the gals, but you're rooting for your school.
I suppose. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of like the Battle Hawks. They train in Dallas, they fly in here for their game, they fly home. I mean, where's the heart in all that?
Are you going on record as being cynical about our Battlehawks?
What got into me? By the way, if Rielle gets up in your face, I'm going to invite her to be here on Donnybrook.
She'd be great.
Absolutely.
But I wish I drove as well as she did.
Yeah,
but no, I'm serious. And
We do too. It's
she's going to be mad that her name
That's unfortunately all the time we have for the topics, but we do have time for the letters you wrote about last week's show. I was wondering if you had thoughts or opinions on the RFT post about Tom Papa Ray being fired from KDHX. He's also been a cornerstone for this local community radio station. I also enjoy your program and realize there are more pressing topics. That from Scott Lovera of Fenton, Missouri. And we heard from Deanna Gallagher, avid watcher and cat lover, who said, we saw Ruben the cat during lockdown, but haven't heard boo or mew from him since. I hope, is he okay? Yes, Deanna.
Yes.
There's Ruben.
He survived.
Cheesecake. Little cheesecake photo.
Thanks for your inquiry. And we heard from Ray Greenfield of St. Louis, who wrote, always a delight when Sarah Fenske is part of the panel. Thank you, Ray. Greenfield, that is. You can write us care of 9 PBS, 3655 Olive Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63108. We love those emails, Donnybrook at 9pbs.org, and those tweets. Use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. You can also call the 9 line at 314-512-9094. Don't forget to join us for Donnie Bash. It's coming up, and we'll tell you about that in a moment, but you can listen to us on your favorite podcast source. That'd be Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and TuneIn. And go to 9pbs.org for those Donnie Bash tickets. There it is, all the details. Thanks to Sarah Fenske for sitting in for the vacationing Bill McClellan. Don't go away, because in just a moment, Ray and Wendy will talk to Dr. Ken Haller about kids and their mental states. That's next on Next Up.
And the members of 9 PBS.